Hi everyone, thank you for joining May 2022 Stampin' Class by Mail. I'm Brenda Cardinal of stampintulip.stampinup.net, and I can't wait for you to make your really fun cards using the Hey Sports Fan Suite by Stampin' Up. I've teamed up with Gina Wieselman, a fellow demonstrator and team member of mine, to offer these monthly classes by mail. This month, it's Gina's turn to show you how to stamp and assemble your cards, and next month, it's my turn. Be sure to watch to the end of the video to learn more about next month's class. And also, don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel so you don't miss any of our videos. Have fun making your cards. Here's Gina.
Thanks, Brenda. I'm Gina Wieselman of MySweetPaper.com, and I can't wait to show you how to stamp and assemble your cards using the Hey Sports Fan Suite from Stampin' Up. This suite can be found in the January to June 2022 mini catalog. If you ordered a class by mail kit from either Brenda or me, all of the cardstock and embellishments are cut to size and part of your kit. Just pull out the stamp set, ink pads, and other supply items shown here, and you'll be ready to go. Please reach out to either Brenda or me if you need any supplies or would like to learn more about becoming a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator or hosting an event. Let's get started. Our first card design is the baseball banners card. If you ordered a class by mail kit from either Brenda or me, all of these parts and pieces were cut and shipped to your house as part of your kit. If you didn't order a kit, go ahead and pause the video here, cut all of these parts and pieces, and come back when you're ready to stamp and assemble. I always recommend stamping first, so we're going to bring in our Night of Navy ink pad. And to start, I will take this very vanilla circle that I cut using the Layering Circles dies, and I'm just going to ink up the You're Amazing stamp and stamp that right in the middle. With these photopolymer stamps, it's pretty great because I can have accurate stamp placement just by seeing right through the stamp. Next, I'm going to bring in my card base, and I just don't like to have a card that's empty on the inside, so I'm just going to take the little star trio stamp and do that in a couple corners, just so there's a little something. And then I'm also going to bring in my envelope and stamp that same set of stars on the corner of the envelope. And that's all of our stamping for this card. With our stamping complete, we can go ahead and start assembly. So I'm going to bring in my Bumblebee and Night of Navy cardstock, and I'm going to add my Stampin' Seal to the Night of Navy. And I'm going to layer that onto the Bumblebee, making sure to center on that. Then I'm going to go ahead and bring in my card base. I will fold it in half and use my bone folder for a nice crisp fold. And then I will add this panel to that. Once again, I'm going for centering with an equal border on all four sides. Next, I'm going to bring in my Designer Series paper and add my adhesive to that. And this panel, I'm going to be putting toward the right of the card front. And so I'm just kind of turning it sideways and moving it out until it looks like I have about equal borders on the three sides of this panel. Make sure it's straight and then apply pressure. Next, I'm going to go ahead and assemble this banner. So I'm going to first take my stamped circle and center that on my Poppy Parade scalloped circle. Put that together. Next, I'm going to layer the banners that were all punched using the Banners Pick-a-Punch. So what I did is I just layered these and built the left side first to my liking before attaching it to the stamped panel. So I'm just going to bring in a little bit of adhesive toward the bottom of this yellow piece. And notice I can line up on the right side if I want, or I can, of course, adjust if I want a little bit more differentiation in length. Okay, and then I'll come in with this third banner, just add some adhesive there. And once again, I'm just going to kind of play around and see where I like that. Okay. With that assembled, I'm going to come to the back of this and just put some adhesive on it. And then I'm going to add my banners. You might want to just play around with positioning on your card as well, because if I attach it all the way over here, I might run into issues with the banners coming off the card. So I would recommend just placing the banners about where you'd like them to be, and then coming in with the layering circles and securing that. And finally, we're going to come in and add our dimensionals or mini dimensionals to the back of this banner piece. I tend to be pretty generous with my dimensionals. I just don't like to risk having any parts of the card sag in the middle. So I'll just remove the release paper and then go ahead and position that on the card. And the last piece here is our resin stars. And with your kit, you received a red and a yellow. You might have had a large red and a small yellow, or vice versa. But either way, you can go ahead and add those stars on the upper left corner. And with our envelope back in view, here is our first card design. Our second card design is the baseball borders design. And here are the parts and pieces for this card. Now this design includes stamping in the Poppy Parade color as well as the Night of Navy. And I'm going to start with my Night of Navy, which I'll be using to create the borders on these pieces. Now, because I care about placement and I want to have an even border, I'm going to be using my Stamparatus. So what I have here is just my basic Stamparatus plate. I'm going to bring in the foam layer because this is a photopolymer stamp. It doesn't have that built-in layer of foam like a rubber stamp would or a cling stamp. And then I'm going to bring in a piece of my grid paper, and I'll just hold all of that in place with one of my magnets. I'm going to bring in one of my plates, and I always like to just prop it up on the a stamp case. And then I'm going to come in and just drop in one of my stamps. Okay, making sure everything is right up in the corner. Now I'm going to bring in my Night of Navy ink. I will ink up the stamp and close the plate. Oh, see, and here's the nice thing about the Stamparatus too. I didn't apply even pressure, so I can just come back and get that perfectly aligned. Now, the way that I'm going to use this, I included with your kit the negative of the die cut piece. These sports event dies are just so much fun. But what I'll do now is center up the negative on the plate and use my magnet to position or to hold that in place. Then I can just drop the die cut piece in, go ahead and re-ink. Just kind of looking to make sure I got even coverage here. And close. Okay, let's take a look. And just like that, we have perfect placement. Now, I would definitely recommend while you have this lined up, drop in all of those pieces and stamp for as many cards as you're going to make right now. Next, what I'll do, I'm going to still keep using the Stamparatus, so I'll just take this plate, set it aside, and bring in my other plate. I'm going to get rid of this piece, and now I'm going to be stamping the ticket. So I'll just put this about there. Placement isn't a big deal. The only thing that I try to avoid is I don't put it too close to the hinge part, because sometimes it can be harder to get even pressure. But I'll pick up my stamp, go ahead and ink that up. And stamp. Okay. Now, if you notice on the card, we're only using the small portion of the ticket, and we're actually going to be using the bigger portion of the ticket for our third card design. So what I'm going to do is just take my paper snips right now and cut this along that line. Now, you might need to do a little bit of trimming to get rid of the perforation along the edge. But with this, now I can save this bigger part and I can actually stamp with a different color. So I'm going to bring back this piece and center this up and use my magnet. And now I'll drop in just this portion of the ticket and go ahead and stamp it. Okay, that looks great. I can see my ink is a little bit wet right now, so I'm going to give it just a second before I remove that piece. And then I'm going to keep this in place since I will be using this same setup for the third card. So I'll just go ahead and clean this stamp, but keep everything positioned as it is. Okay, so now that we have our navy borders on these two pieces, I'm going to come back with my Poppy Parade ink, and I can add the greetings in Poppy Parade. So I'm going to take Happy Birthday. Of course, you could use any of the great greeting options from the stamp set. And then for the banner, I am going to use Hooray. Now for the inside of my card, I have my Very Vanilla, and I'm going to stamp on it with the Poppy Parade. I love this greeting, hope your day is a grand slam. So I'll ink that up, and I like to position that more toward the top than center. And then just to add a little bit more detail, I'll bring in my stars, and I'll, just like for the first card, stamp those in either corner. And once again, I love adding a little something to the envelope, so I'll put those in the corner as well. I almost forgot, I did add a little bit of texture to this red ticket that was die cut out of the sport event dies. So I'm just going to take my stamp. It just is a little texture stamp. You can kind of randomly place that around. It's nice because if you end up overlapping, it doesn't really matter. So I'm just going to add a little texture in the Poppy Parade, tone on top of the Poppy Parade ticket. Okay, with our stamping complete, we can go ahead and assemble. So I'll bring in my Night of Navy card base, fold that in half, and use my bone folder for a nice crease fold along that score line. And then I'm going to go ahead and bring in right away my stamped insert. I'll add my stamp and seal and put that on the inside of the card, centering it on all four sides. Then next, I'm going to grab this border piece, which I cut using the rectangle stitch dies. I just used 2 different sizes of the dies and nested them together when I was running this through my die cutting machine. So I was able to cut this border piece with 1 pass through my machine. But I just liked how this was a little different than what I often see. So this I'm going to center up on the card. Okay. Next, I'm going to bring my ticket in. Again, Stampin' seal for this. And the placement of this, I like having it at an angle. I liked so that all 4 of the corners were touching the border. But other than that, of course, it's not straight. So you can just kind of position that as you like. Now notice I did not apply a ton of pressure on this side of that ticket because we're going to be layering these smaller tickets underneath that. So this is what the tickets look like when they come, out of the die cutting machine. And so you'll get full pieces like this in your kit, but it's actually kind of fun. You can fold along the perforation lines and actually tear these tickets in half. I mean, you could tear them along all the lines if you wanted. So I'm just going to do that so that it's a little bit easier to deal with. And in fact, for some of these, I might even want to trim it down to just 2 of them. So I'll start with my Poppy Parade one, and I'm just going to add some adhesive to the back of that. Slide that under and secure in place. Next, I'll do the same with the Very Vanilla. And this one, I might actually extend it up a little farther than I even did on my initial sample card. And then last of all, the Night of Navy. There we go. Lots of layers to this card. So the next piece that I'm going to add is my Hooray banner. And I have 12 inches of the fan baker's twine in the Night of Navy color. And I'm going to just loop that together about like that. And just kind of see what that looks like. And that actually looks pretty good. So what I like to do is just take a quick piece of Scotch tape and secure it on the back. And I'm just securing it right where all of those pieces met. And now I can kind of play around with the exact placement in terms of how much overlap I want, if I want it equal or where I want more. And then once I like how that looks, I'm going to come in with my dimensionals. And I'm going to use the dimensionals to hold it in place, this twine, where I want it to be. So, it isn't necessary to have dimensionals that close to each other, but because I'm using it to secure the baker's twine, I am going to put them that close to each other. Now I will peel the release paper and position this. One thing that I'm going to note, I'm just going to bring in this happy birthday ticket so that that's in place as I'm putting this banner on so that I make sure there's enough room for everything. And then with the happy birthday ticket, you could use your regular size dimensionals or of course your mini Stampin' dimensionals, whichever you prefer. I'll use a few of these. Peel the release paper. And I'm just going to kind of put this in the corner. And there is our second card design. Our final card design is the Valuable Dad Diagonal Fun Fold. And here are the parts and pieces for this design. Now, before I start with the stamping and assembly instructions here, I want to show you how I made the template for getting these diagonal lines at the correct angle. So for the main card base, which I cut out of Evening Evergreen for you, I made a template. So I started with a piece of cardstock measuring 11 by 5.5 inches, scored that at 3 3/8 and 7 5/8 inches. And then what I did is I measured from each side. So I went down 1.5 inches from the top and in 1 inch from either side. And then from the top pieces, I just drew a line from there to the score line and same. And then from there again to that 1 inch mark. So in this way, I created a template. And after doing this, I actually cut along these lines. And then when I had my piece of cardstock, I just positioned this and used a pencil to trace, and it was really easy. Now, this designer series paper, of course, also has a couple of diagonal cuts. So I also made a template for that. So I started again with a piece of cardstock, rectangular, 5 1/8 by 3 inches. And then once again, same measurements, 1.5 inches from the top and go all the way to the corner for cutting, and 1 inch in from the left and connect back up to that other mark. Once again, I actually just cut along this line so that when I cut my rectangle of designer series paper, I could just layer this on top, draw with a pencil, and cut using my paper cutter. All right, we are going to start with our stamping. So from our previous card, I still have my stamp mounted on my stamparatus. I still have this in place, but because this is so thin, I'm actually going to swap this out. So in your kit, you would have received 2 negatives, one where the excess is close to the small ticket, like it is here, and then the other one where the extra cardstock is closer to the big ticket. And so that's the one that I'm going to use here, just because it's the big ticket that we're stamping. So I want to be sure that everything is just so. So I'll position this. Now that I'm satisfied with my placement of this, I'm going to bring in that other half or that other portion of the ticket that was left from the previous card and drop that into the negative. Bring out my Evening Evergreen ink pad and stamp up, or ink up, excuse me, ink the ticket. And go ahead and close, applying nice even pressure. Okay. And there is our ticket border. Of course, this is a photopolymer stamp, so if you don't have a stamparatus or if you're just feeling confident about your ability to position without, you could certainly mount this on a clear block and go ahead and do your stamping without the stamparatus. I just like it, especially if I'm making multiple cards. Now I can just drop in the next ticket and I don't have to worry about it. With our ticket stamped, next I'm going to go ahead and just add the greeting on there. I love this greeting, Most Valuable Dad. I think it's cute. I love the font. So fun. The only other stamping I'm going to do is just on my envelope front. You could, of course, add stars to the inside of your card. You'll want to be careful about where you place them if they're at the top so that they don't show when the card is closed. But this time I'm going to take my little hooray stamp and put that on the envelope. Okay, with our stamping complete, we can go ahead and assemble. So I'm going to bring in my card base, and first I will use my bone folder to fold both of these flaps in toward the middle. Okay. And I will just quickly note that this left side was embossed for you using the gingham embossing folder. Next, I'm going to layer on my designer series paper. So I'll just grab my Stampin' seal. It's kind of strange to add adhesive to something of this shape. It is not a normal shape. But for this, I am just trying to match up. So there's approximately equal borders, but this is actually quite forgiving because it's a tone-on-tone situation here. So you can see this border actually along the top, I didn't do a perfect job of lining that up, but you won't even notice because the colors blend together so well. And then I'm going to add my adhesive to the Very Vanilla, which will just be on the inside of the card. So we'll open it back up and center that like so. Okay, next step, we are going to create this pennant. One quick note about the pennants that is really nice. This piece is actually cut from the reverse of this designer series paper. So I was able to use these cut off triangles and that was plenty of designer series paper to cut the pennant out. So that was kind of a nice surprise. But for the pennant, I decided to layer a solid evening evergreen at the bottom of this designer series paper one, just to give it a little bit more contrast. So I'm just going to use my Stampin' seal for that. And then I need to attach just a standard toothpick. So what I'm going to do for that is use my liquid multi-purpose glue. And you will want to be pretty generous with the glue here. So I just kind of put some on, positioned the toothpick, and let it sit until it was dry. This does require some patience, of course. That's probably the hardest part, but my advice is just leave it here for a few minutes, come back, give it a little test to see if it's in place, and then you can proceed with assembling your card. Okay, so now that our pennant is dried, we can go ahead and continue with the assembly. So I'm going to bring out my regular Stampin' Dimensionals for the Most Valuable Dad banner. I'll just put one in each corner. Remove the release paper. And then I'm going to position this pretty far toward the right of this flap so that there's plenty of room to attach the pennant on the left side of the flap. Then what I'm going to do is with my assembled pennant, I'm going to bring in just one mini Stampin' Dimensional and I'm going to put it kind of toward the top here. However, I noticed if I just adhered it with one dimensional, there was still quite a bit of give. So I'm also going to come in with my liquid multi-purpose glue. I'm actually just going to remove that release paper right away. But then just come in with my liquid multi-purpose glue and add a little bit at the bottom of the pennant so that it will secure to that label. So now with that, I can come in and I'm going to just tuck this under and kind of at an angle and press down. And now I'll have the liquid glue holding it here and the mini dimensional holding it there. Last thing to add, of course, we need a couple of resin stars here. So we have a large and a small, both in the evening evergreen. And I just think this monochromatic look is really fun. And with the envelope, here is our final card design. All right, the last thing I have for you before Brenda rejoins us is some sample cards. I had so much fun playing around with this set and I'm excited to share a few more samples with you. So the first one that I'll share is going to look very familiar to our Fun Fold third design because it basically is the same. I just used a different color scheme, different designer series paper, But other than that, it's exactly the same design. One other difference, since there was good contrast here between the bumblebee pennant and all of the other colors, I didn't have to add that second pennant to provide that contrast. But there are so many different ways that you could use this layout with different combinations of colors and papers. Next up is another design that really aims to feature the designer series paper. This one, of course, with baseball, I had circles on my mind, so I decided to just add a couple of greetings, have them go off a little bit and cut off those circles, and I'm really happy with how this one turned out. Next up, for this design, something that's worth mentioning is this Way to Go pennant was die cut directly from the designer series paper pack. So they have some really fantastic pennant designs and ticket designs, and you can just cut that directly out of the designer series paper with the dies, and it's perfect. So this one, I just wanted to go with the navy and bumblebee color combination. I know of plenty of schools with this color combination, so I was thinking this would be a great graduation card too. Another card here, this one I wanted to create something that wasn't sports specific. So it says hooray, I used the designer series paper. It has kind of a wood grain pattern, but this one doesn't have anything that identifies it as a sport even. So I layered up 3 different die cuts from the Tasteful Labels Dies to make this greeting the focal point. Next up, I wanted to feature the kind of sunburst pattern on the designer series paper. I also loved this die cut, the number 1. So I just layered a greeting panel across the bottom portion and brought in a few of those elements. Inspired by the monochromatic look of our third design, I wanted to play around with a couple more fun folds using that same color scheme. So for this one, it opens like this. And I like that it also includes the baseballs and the baseball bats for the center panel, still in the same color scheme, but with some nice contrast. Another fun fold here. This one opens like so. It again uses the evening evergreen. It includes some of the ribbon from the fan baker's twine pack, but this time I brought in some crumb cake cardstock as well for a little bit more contrast. And in a very similar layout to that last card that I shared, this one is another fun fold, but once again, I cut this general admission, the ticket stub, directly from the designer series paper. It's just so fun. There are different colors of tickets. There's one that says you're invited, so you could actually write on it to give some information for an event. So I just love that designer series paper and think there's so many different things you could do with it. With all of these different card designs available, and with the Pinterest board that Brenda and I will share with you, I really hope that you have a great time putting together lots and lots of different cards using the Hey Sports Fan Suite. Thanks for participating in this month's Stampin' Class by Mail, and here's Brenda with a few more things for you.
Thanks, Gina, for showing us how to make those awesome cards. Be sure to follow the link in the email that shared this video with you to access a specially curated Pinterest board that will show you even more fun ways to use the supplies from this month's class. Next month, it's my turn to design and share the cards with you, and I'm excited to announce we'll be using the new Butterfly Kisses suite from Stampin' Up's brand new 2022-2023 annual catalog. At the time of filming this video, we weren't able to order the suite quite yet. So look for an email from Gina or me that will be coming soon that will show you both the card designs and all the class details for June 2022's class. The best way to take next month's class is to order a class kit by mail from either Gina or me. In your kit, you'll receive all your cardstock cut and ready to go, embellishments, and envelopes, and it'll all be shipped right to your door. All you'll need to do is add a few additional supplies. The registration deadline for this class is June 5th, 2022. And as I mentioned, look for an email coming soon that will share all the class details with you, including a bonus opportunity to earn a free Stampin' Class by Mail card sampler kit with a qualifying purchase made with either Gina or me. If you're not already on one of our email lists, contact either of us so we can be sure to share all the important class information with you. and we'd love to hear from you. So please leave a comment on this video and let us know what your favorite card was this month. And again, don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. Until next month, happy stamping!